January 17, 1944. The sun breaks over the Pacific, pale light glinting off the steel deck of the USS Essex. The hum of machinery mixes with the metallic scent of aviation fuel. Flight crews move with quiet precision, harnessing straps, checking instruments, their faces tense yet focused. Engines roar to life, shaking the deck beneath boots and catapult rails. The F6F Hellcats line up, their blue-grey fuselages glinting under the morning sun, propellers slicing the air, ready for the next mission. Above, the horizon is a line of silver. Enemy aircraft could appear at any moment. On the carrier, every officer and sailor is aware. The outcome of the day's sorties could shift the balance of power in the Pacific. Pilots exchange short nods, understanding the stakes without words. Each aircraft is more than metal and machinery. It is survival, precision, and the embodiment of American industrial might. The first Hellcat launches, climbing into the open sky, engines screaming, wings cutting the wind. Below, the deck crew braces for the next, aware that the machine they built, the aircraft they trust, will decide life or death over the vast expanse of ocean. From this dawn, a new chapter in naval aviation is about to unfold, one that will redefine air combat in the Pacific. By late 1941, the United States Navy faced a stark reality. The attack on Pearl Harbor had shattered complacency, leaving battleships sunk, airfields in ruins, and morale shaken. In the Pacific, Japanese naval aviation dominated the skies with the Mitsubishi A6M0, a lightweight, agile fighter that outperformed the existing U.S. Navy F4F Wildcat in maneuverability and climb rate. Early engagements in the Coral Sea and Midway confirmed a painful truth. American pilots needed an aircraft capable of surviving dogfights, delivering decisive firepower, and operating effectively from aircraft carriers. The F4F Wildcat had held its ground through tactical ingenuity. Pilots learned to use the Thack Weave, a defensive maneuver designed to counter the Zero's superior agility. Despite these strategies, losses were mounting. American carriers and aircrews could not rely on maneuverability alone. They needed speed, firepower, and durability. Intelligence reports from the Pacific confirmed enemy kill ratios heavily favored the Japanese in early encounters. The U.S. Navy recognized that the technological gap would decide the next stage of the war. Grumman Aircraft Engineering, based in Bethpage, New York, had already gained a reputation for rugged, carrier-capable designs. Their previous aircraft, including the F4F Wildcat, were known for survivability and pilot protection. The Navy now demanded a fighter that combined the Wildcat's toughness with superior performance. The project that would become the F6F Hellcat was born not from ambition, but necessity. Engineers focused on simplicity, reliability, and high-volume production. Every component, from the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine to the 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns, was selected for maximum efficiency under combat conditions. Simultaneously, American industrial capacity was shifting into wartime overdrive. Factories across the United States were retooled for mass production. Grumman was contracted to produce hundreds of fighters per month, a rate previously unimaginable. Pilots and mechanics alike understood that each aircraft leaving the factory could tip the balance in the Pacific. The Navy's strategic focus expanded. It was no longer enough to match Japanese skill in the air. They needed a platform that would assert dominance through superior technology and production. By mid-1942, early prototypes underwent rigorous testing. Engineers pushed the airframe through extreme stress trials, simulating the harsh conditions of carrier takeoffs, landings, and aerial combat. The Hellcat's robust design allowed it to absorb damage that would cripple other fighters. Armor plating shielded the cockpit. F-sealing fuel tanks reduced fire risk, and the airframe could sustain hits without catastrophic failure. Pilots reported confidence in its handling, noting that the aircraft's stability and raw power allowed them to dictate engagements rather than react defensively. Meanwhile, the Pacific theater remained perilous. Japanese carriers still prowled the ocean, and the Zero maintained air superiority. Key battles such as Midway had inflicted severe losses on both sides, but the lessons were clear. Aircraft performance and pilot survivability were decisive. The Navy recognized that a single new fighter could alter the trajectory of the conflict. With the Hellcat, the focus shifted from survival to dominance. training programs accelerated. Pilots were briefed on tactical engagement strategies optimized for the Hellcat's capabilities. Unlike the Wildcat, the Hellcat could dive faster, climb quicker, and carry heavier ordnance without compromising stability. Officers emphasized aggressive tactics, teaching pilots to exploit speed and firepower rather than relying solely on maneuvering. Each sortie became an opportunity to test doctrine under real combat conditions, refining engagement protocols that would eventually decimate Japanese air forces. This period, late 1942 through early 1943, was both a crucible and a proving ground. The combination of American industrial might, engineering foresight, and tactical adaptation laid the foundation for the Hellcat's emergence. By the time the first squadrons were deployed to frontline carriers, the aircraft was not merely a tool of war, it was a symbol of strategic evolution. The stage was set for an aircraft that would reshape aerial combat in the Pacific, providing the Navy with a decisive advantage that had been absent in the early years of the conflict. The arrival of the Hellcat on the carriers signaled more than reinforcement. It represented a turning point in the struggle for air supremacy, one that would culminate in battles of unprecedented scale. Its first flights into combat would test everything: design, training, tactics, and endurance under fire. The Grumman F6F Hellcat officially entered service in early 1943, emerging from a design philosophy rooted in resilience, simplicity, and lethality. Engineers had prioritized a balance between speed, firepower, and survivability, an aircraft capable of withstanding the rigors of carrier operations while overpowering the enemy. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine delivered 2,000 horsepower, allowing the Hellcat to reach speeds exceeding 380 miles per hour. Its 6 .50 caliber Browning machine guns, mounted in the wings, provided concentrated firepower capable of downing enemy aircraft in seconds. Every feature, from the rugged landing gear to the self-sealing fuel tanks, was optimized for prolonged combat effectiveness in the Pacific's demanding environment. Production was unprecedented. Grumman implemented assembly line innovations, coordinated with subcontractors across the United States, and streamlined quality control without compromising durability. By mid-1943, over 1,500 Hellcats had been delivered, a number that would double within months. Each fighter represented not only technological progress, but a shift in naval warfare strategy. The ability to field overwhelming air power from carriers, projecting influence across thousands of miles of ocean. Pilots assigned to the Hellcat underwent rigorous transition training. Experienced Wildcat pilots adapted quickly, noting the Hellcat's superior climb rate, roll speed, and dive capabilities. Tactical manuals were revised to exploit these advantages. Instead of relying on defensive maneuvers like the thack weave, pilots were encouraged to engage aggressively, initiating attacks from altitude and dictating the pace of combat. Carriers became launching platforms for offensive dominance, rather than merely defensive assets. The first combat deployment occurred in the Solomon Islands, where Japanese air forces maintained strongholds despite sustained American offensives. Initial sorties confirmed expectations. The Hellcat's speed and firepower allowed pilots to engage multiple enemy aircraft with reduced risk. Survivability statistics were remarkable. Where Wildcats had suffered disproportionately high losses, Hellcats returned from missions with only minor damage in many cases. Observers noted a qualitative shift. Pilots had the confidence to pursue rather than evade Japanese fighters. Beyond raw numbers, the Hellcat's presence altered Japanese tactical calculations. The A6M-0, long the symbol of Japanese aerial supremacy, faced an aircraft it could not easily outmaneuver. The Hellcat could absorb hits that would destroy lighter planes and respond with concentrated fire that overwhelmed enemy pilots. As kill ratios began to favor the Americans, Japanese commanders were forced to revise strategies, increasing caution in engagements and dispersing forces to avoid catastrophic losses. The psychological effect on both sides was profound. American pilots gained boldness, while Japanese aviators grew wary of encounters they had previously dominated. Concurrently, the Hellcat influenced carrier operations at the strategic level. Fleet commanders recognized that air superiority was no longer tenuous. With Hellcats, carriers could project lethal power deep into enemy territory. Strike missions expanded in scope and intensity. Pilots conducted long-range sweeps, intercepted enemy formations, and provided cover for amphibious operations, all with a level of confidence unattainable in earlier years. The integration of Hellcats into task forces transformed operational doctrine, allowing commanders to plan offensives that relied on air dominance as a foundation rather than an uncertain variable. By late 1943, the Hellcat had proven itself in multiple theaters, the Solomons, New Guinea, and the Central Pacific. Its combination of firepower, durability, and ease of handling created a multiplier effect across naval aviation. Every successful mission reinforced the aircraft's reputation, attracting additional pilot training, resources, and refining engagement protocols. American naval air power had shifted from reactive to proactive, establishing the framework for decisive victories in 1944. The stage was now set for the Hellcat to dominate pivotal battles that would define the Pacific War. The aircraft's emergence was more than technological. It was a turning point in strategic thought, a fusion of engineering, industrial capacity, and combat experience. Pilots and commanders alike understood that the next engagements would test the Hellcat's capabilities to their limits, challenging both human skill and machine performance in the crucible of modern warfare. For the pilots of the Hellcat, the aircraft represented more than a machine. It was a lifeline in an unforgiving war. Training emphasized not only technical proficiency, but psychological resilience. Early Wildcat veterans described the transition to the Hellcat as liberating. The aircraft's stability under fire and responsive controls allowed them to think offensively rather than defensively. A pilot climbing above the Pacific horizon could now dictate the terms of engagement. Stress remained constant. Losses were never far from memory, but the Hellcat's forgiving design reduced the fear that had accompanied every dogfight in the early years. Anecdotal reports from squadron debriefs repeatedly note pilots relying on the aircraft's resilience to survive encounters that would have been fatal in earlier fighters. Crew camaraderie and trust in their aircraft created a new level of operational cohesion, one that amplified the effectiveness of carrier-based air groups. The tactical deployment of the Hellcat redefined carrier aviation. Commanders leveraged its superior speed, climb rate, and firepower to establish air dominance before enemy aircraft could engage. Unlike earlier fighter, which had relied heavily on defensive maneuvers, the Hellcat allowed for aggressive altitude-based tactics. Pilots could initiate attacks from above, dive to strike with lethal effect, and recover with minimal risk of structural failure. Formation flying emphasized mutual support, allowing squadrons to cover each other while maintaining offensive pressure. Carrier operations integrated Hellcat capabilities, planning strike packages and intercept missions that exploited its operational ceiling and range, giving American forces unprecedented flexibility in the Pacific. The F6F Hellcat embodied the culmination of engineering priorities in mid-20th century naval aviation: survivability, firepower, and ease of production. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine provided raw horsepower unmatched by most contemporaries, while the robust airframe absorbed damage that would cripple other fighters. Armament configuration of 6 wing-mounted, 50-caliber machine guns allowed concentrated bursts, enabling pilots to destroy enemy aircraft in a few seconds. Armor and self-sealing fuel tanks addressed one of the Wildcat's critical vulnerabilities. Maintenance crews appreciated the design's simplicity. Field repairs were straightforward, maximizing sortie rates and operational readiness. The Hellcat's combination of power, durability, and operational reliability made it a cornerstone of American naval air strategy. Naval leadership recognized the Hellcat as a strategic tool, not merely an incremental improvement. Admirals like Mark Mitcher and William Halsey adapted carrier doctrine to capitalize on the aircraft's strengths. Planning focused on offensive dominance, preemptive strikes, long-range interception, and concentrated air power against enemy carriers and installations. The aircraft enabled commanders to project force beyond the limitations of prior engagements, transforming task forces into flexible, self-reliant entities capable of decisive action. Leadership decisions now integrated Hellcat performance as a variable in strategic calculations, altering fleet deployments and engagement protocols. The arrival of the F6F Hellcat forced the Imperial Japanese Navy to confront an aircraft it could not easily counter. The Mitsubishi A6M0, previously dominant in the Pacific, relied on agility and lightweight construction. Against the Hellcat, these advantages diminished. The American fighter could dive faster, absorb damage, and deliver concentrated firepower. Japanese pilots faced increasing casualties, forcing tactical adaptations. Intelligence reports from intercepted communications reveal growing concern over the Hellcat's capabilities. Engagements that had once been routine now required cautious planning, dispersal of formations, and reliance on anti-aircraft fire rather than direct dogfighting. The psychological effect was immediate. Pilots accustomed to air superiority were now forced onto the defensive, altering the strategic calculus of the Japanese Air Command. The Hellcat's effectiveness came at a cost that extended beyond the immediate battlefield. Aircrew losses, while reduced compared to previous aircraft, were inevitable. Missions over contested islands exposed pilots to anti-aircraft fire, treacherous weather, and prolonged engagements. The human toll was measurable. Letters, diaries, and official reports document the stress, fear, and determination of those who flew. Ethical considerations surfaced regarding the intensity of aerial bombardments on occupied islands, where Japanese forces and local civilians were both affected. Commanders balanced operational objectives with human cost, recognizing that even superior technology could not fully eliminate suffering. The Hellcat enabled precision and survivability, yet it remained a weapon of war with unavoidable consequences. The Hellcat's impact extended beyond the cockpit to the industrial and logistical framework of the United States. Grumman's ability to produce aircraft at scale demonstrated a new form of wartime efficiency. Supply chains coordinated engines, airframes, and armaments across multiple states. Maintenance procedures were streamlined, reducing turnaround time between sorties. The high production rate ensured that squadrons remained fully equipped, a stark contrast to earlier periods when aircraft losses threatened operational capability. This industrial reliability provided commanders with confidence. The Hellcat was not only superior in performance but consistently available, allowing sustained offensive campaigns across vast oceanic distances. Confidence in the Hellcat reshaped the mental framework of American pilots and commanders. The knowledge that aircraft could absorb enemy fire and outperform opponents instilled aggression and initiative. Pilots approached engagements with calculated risk, initiating maneuvers that maximized offensive potential. Morale improvements extended to entire carrier air groups. The aircraft became a symbol of dominance and technological edge. Conversely, enemy pilots, aware of the Hellcat's capabilities, faced stress, hesitation, and growing fear. This psychological shift, subtle but significant, contributed directly to strategic outcomes, reinforcing the aircraft's role as a force multiplier in the Pacific theater. Each of these angles converges on a central truth. The F6F Hellcat was not merely a fighter but a transformative instrument of war. Its design, deployment, and operational success reshaped the strategies, tactics, and psychology of the Pacific conflict. With the Hellcat, the U.S. Navy gained more than air superiority. It acquired a decisive tool capable of altering the trajectory of battles and campaigns alike. June 19 to 20, 1944. The Mariana Islands stretch across the Pacific like a chain of fate, each atoll a potential pivot in the struggle for air supremacy. On the morning of June 19th, Task Force 58 launched its fighters from the decks of the USS Enterprise, USS Lexington, and USS Hornet. F6F Hellcats roared into formation, engines hammering the thin morning air, their wings cutting through the first light. Intelligence reports had warned of a massive Japanese carrier strike force approaching, intent on defending the Marianas and halting American advances. What followed would later be called the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, a moment that would define the Hellcat's dominance. Pilots ascended in tight V formations, maintaining altitude advantage as doctrine dictated. The Japanese First Air Fleet advanced with the precision of years of training, their Zeros confident in previous victories. Initial contact occurred near the Saipan approach. Hellcats, exploiting their superior speed and dive capabilities, engaged enemy fighters before they could coordinate attacks. Within minutes, multiple Zeros were on fire, trailing smoke into the blue expanse below. The kill ratio was extraordinary. By the end of the first day, American fighters had destroyed over 300 Japanese aircraft while losing fewer than 30. The Hellcat's performance was decisive. Pilots executed high-speed dives, leveraging the aircraft's stability to maintain accuracy under fire. Wing-mounted 50 caliber machine guns cut swaths through enemy formations, and armor-plated fuselages allowed Hellcats to return from missions with critical hits that would have downed lesser aircraft. Veteran pilot reports from VF-17 describe near-miraculous survivals, planes returning with wings shredded, control surfaces damaged, yet still able to land safely on carrier decks. This reliability transformed combat psychology. Pilots attacked aggressively, confident that their aircraft could endure punishment that would have grounded their predecessors. Carrier commanders, observing from flagships, noted the strategic implications immediately. Air superiority, previously uncertain, was now effectively guaranteed. Task Force 58 could conduct simultaneous offensive and defensive operations, striking Japan. SE positions while maintaining aerial cover for amphibious landings. The integration of Hellcats into coordinated strike packages allowed the Navy to exploit weaknesses in Japanese formations, disrupt reinforcements, and protect its own assets with unprecedented efficiency. The Japanese response was chaotic. Experienced pilots, forced into defensive positions, attempted to regroup but were intercepted repeatedly. The tactical doctrine of the zero, agility, tight turns, and vertical maneuvers, proved insufficient against Hellcats utilizing altitude advantage, coordinated formations, and concentrated firepower. Survivors described the engagement as overwhelming. Once contact was made, escape was unlikely, and losses mounted rapidly. Commanders on the ground and in the air recognized a turning point had been reached. The balance of aerial power in the Pacific was shifting irreversibly. Throughout the battle, the Hellcat's combination of speed, durability, and firepower allowed American pilots to dictate engagements. Pilots like Lieutenant Commander Edward Butch O'Hare, flying in coordinated squadrons, noted that controlling altitude and initiating attacks from higher positions neutralized the Zero's maneuvering advantage. Dive attacks allowed for maximum speed, accuracy, and survivability, while defensive maneuvers were rarely required. This approach became a tactical blueprint for all carrier-based Hellcat operations. By the end of June 20th, the Pacific sky was littered with the wreckage of Japanese aircraft, while the American carriers remained virtually unscathed. The effectiveness of the Hellcat was irrefutable. It had shifted the strategic momentum of the war. The Turkey Shoot was not merely a victory, it was a demonstration of how superior design, pilot training, and tactical doctrine could converge to produce overwhelming dominance. The outcome validated the Navy's investment in engineering, production, and training, and it foreshadowed the decisive campaigns to come in the Philippine Sea and beyond. Following the initial engagement over the Marianas, June 20th continued with relentless intensity. American Hellcats, now operating with refined coordination, intercepted incoming Japanese bombers targeting Saipan and Tinian. Pilots like Lieutenant Commander Eugene Valencia reported simultaneous engagements, multiple waves of enemy aircraft converging from different vectors, each met with disciplined defensive formations. The Hellcat's firepower and speed allowed squadrons to neutralize threats before they reached the islands, reducing casualties among U.S. ground forces and ensuring the success of amphibious landings. The psychological effect on Japanese aircrews became pronounced. Veteran pilots, once confident in their dogfighting prowess, faced the reality of an opponent that could absorb punishment, dive faster, and strike with precision from above. Intercepted communications indicated disarray and frustration within the Japanese command structure. Attempts to mount counterattacks were fragmented, pilots were isolated in the sky, overwhelmed by coordinated Hellcat assaults. Carrier-based Zeros were systematically destroyed, limiting the enemy's ability to contest American control of the air. Hellcat pilots employed innovative maneuvers refined from earlier Pacific engagements. The dive attack strategy, combined with altitude advantage, allowed multiple fighters to engage a single target sequentially, maximizing hit probability while minimizing exposure. Wingmen maintained close formation, providing overlapping fields of fire and mutual defense. Observers noted that these tactics neutralized the Zero's traditional superiority in close-quarters combat. The engagement demonstrated that Hellcat doctrine had matured. It was no longer a new aircraft in combat, but a fully integrated instrument of air dominance. Carrier commanders seized the opportunity to expand operations. Task forces launched simultaneous strikes against enemy carriers and airfields on Guam and Saipan, ensuring that remaining Japanese forces could not regroup effectively. The Hellcat's range and reliability enabled these operations at distances previously considered unsustainable. Pilots returned from sorties with minimal damage and high enemy aircraft counts, providing both tactical intelligence and morale boosts. Reports documented instances where Hellcats, even when damaged, successfully escorted returning bombers to their carriers, highlighting the aircraft's resilience and operational flexibility. The Battle of the Philippine Sea, culminating in the Marianas Turkey Shoot, marked a decisive turning point. Over 600 Japanese aircraft were destroyed, with minimal American losses. The Hellcat's impact was indisputable. It had shifted the balance of power in the Pacific. Japanese naval aviation, once dominant, was reduced to a shadow of its former capacity. Carrier-based air superiority became an achievable standard for the U.S. Navy, enabling subsequent campaigns in the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. The broader implications were strategic as well as tactical. The Hellcat had validated the Navy's investment in production, training, and doctrine. Squadrons equipped with the aircraft could sustain offensive operations across the vast Pacific expanse with unprecedented reliability. Commanders adjusted operational planning around this new reality, emphasizing coordinated strikes, air cover for amphibious landings, and attrition of remaining Japanese air power. The aircraft's performance had transformed not only individual engagements, but the overarching trajectory of the Pacific War. By the close of the battle, the Hellcat had proven itself beyond doubt. Pilots returned to carriers, exhausted but victorious, their aircraft bearing the scars of combat yet still airworthy. The combination of human skill, technological superiority, and tactical doctrine had reached its apex. The decisive moment was complete. Japanese air power was crippled, American naval aviation was ascendant, and the Hellcat had earned its place as the most effective carrier-based fighter in the Pacific theater. The Battle of the Philippine Sea left an unmistakable imprint on the Pacific theater. The Japanese Navy suffered catastrophic losses, over 600 aircraft destroyed, 3 carriers rendered ineffective, and a significant portion of experienced pilots eliminated. These figures, verified through operational reports and post-battle assessments, marked a turning point in naval aviation. For the United States, the Hellcat emerged not only as a tactical asset, but as a strategic force multiplier, reshaping the balance of power in the Pacific. Operational analysis underscores the Hellcat's role in these results. Pilots reported confidence in the aircraft's durability. Damaged planes frequently returned safely, reducing attrition and preserving experienced aircrew. The aircraft's speed, climb rate, and concentrated armament allowed U.S. Navy pilots to dictate the terms of engagement. The Turkey Shoot exemplified this. Multiple waves of Japanese fighters were engaged from advantageous altitudes, with minimal exposure to return fire. Official after-action reports cite kill ratios exceeding 19% in favor of American forces, a level unattainable with earlier aircraft such as the F6F Hellcat. The victory reinforced carrier doctrine. U.S. commanders, recognizing the combination of superior aircraft and disciplined tactics, expanded offensive operations across the Pacific. Task forces could now undertake simultaneous strikes against enemy positions while maintaining robust air cover for amphibious operations. This operational flexibility allowed campaigns in the Marianas, Philippines, and later Okinawa to proceed with confidence in the skies above. Carrier aviation was no longer reactive. It had become a decisive instrument of strategy, centered on the capabilities of the Hellcat. Human consequences were evident on both sides. American pilots gained morale and tactical assurance, their trust in the Hellcat translating into aggressive, effective operations. Letters and diaries from the evolution of naval aviation, its design principles, emphasis on durability, ease of maintenance, firepower, and pilot survivability, became benchmarks for post-war fighter development. aircraft carriers, now proven as platforms for sustained offensive air power, were integrated into long-range strategy with confidence that technological and tactical supremacy could be maintained. The F6F Hellcat was a decisive element not only in individual battles, but in the strategic trajectory of the Pacific War. The combination of technological innovation, pilot skill, and industrial capacity created an irreversible shift. By the end of 1944, Japanese carrier aviation was incapable of contesting the skies in meaningful numbers. The Hellcat's success validated the Navy's focus on robust, mass-produced fighters designed for both survivability and lethality. Its legacy would extend beyond World War II, influencing aircraft design, carrier operations, and military doctrine for decades to come. The F6F Hellcat stands as a testament to the convergence of engineering, strategy, and human endurance. Its legacy is not measured solely in enemy aircraft destroyed, but in the transformation it brought to naval warfare. In the crucible of the Pacific, the Hellcat redefined what a carrier-based fighter could achieve: survivability in the face of enemy fire, overwhelming firepower, and reliability across thousands of miles of ocean. It became a force multiplier, enabling American naval commanders to shift from cautious engagement to offensive dominance, a shift that altered the trajectory of the war. Beyond its technical specifications, the Hellcat's impact is human. Pilots, once constrained by the limitations of earlier aircraft, found agency and confidence in its design. Each sortie was an intersection of skill, courage, and trust in the machine beneath them. The aircraft's resilience under fire allowed lives to be preserved, yet its effectiveness magnified the stakes of combat, imposing a responsibility that extended from deck crews to commanders plotting operations across the Pacific expanse. Strategically, the Hellcat accelerated the decline of Japanese naval aviation. Its combination of performance, mass production, and doctrinal integration removed the enemy's advantage in the air, making amphibious operations, carrier strikes, and island campaigns feasible on a scale previously unattainable. The aircraft became both shield and spear, protecting American forces while projecting decisive power over the vast oceanic theater. In historical terms, the F6F Hellcat illustrates the interplay between technology and warfare. Superior design alone is insufficient without trained operators, industrial capacity, and tactical doctrine. Its success underscores that decisive innovation emerges where these factors converge. For the Pacific War, the Hellcat was not merely a fighter, it was a turning point, a symbol of American ingenuity, and a lesson in the calculated application of engineering to strategy. In the quiet after the roar of engines and the smoke of battle, the Hellcat endures as a reminder of the profound impact that a single, well-conceived weapon can have on the course of history. A machine that turned the tide, shaped naval aviation, and left an indelible mark on the art of warfare.